Number 25. The question is, what is it like to be a person with Asperger syndrome? And number 25, are you ready for this? People with Asperger syndrome, according to me, that's my opinion, live in the Uncanny Valley. Now, in case you have never heard of the Uncanny Valley, that's not a physical place, that's a phenomenon. And it was first recognized, I don't know who first recognized it, but the term Uncanny Valley was applied by a Japanese robotics professor. And if you don't mind, I'm going to take a moment and butcher his name. I think it is Masahiro Mori. Well, that wasn't too bad, but this was like, I don't know, 1970, 1971. And being a robotics professor, he was interested not only in the robots, but how people interacted with them. And he found something phenomenal that there was this increase in, I guess you would call it affinity with robots as they got more and more human-like. But there was a curve. And once they got too human-like, well, then they creep people out, and people didn't like them. In fact, well, how bad was it? Well, if you have a robot that is human-like, I mean, it looks like a human, best it can, talks like a human, expressions on its face, its movements, just human-like. If it was still, people would be creeped out the same way, on the same level, as if they were seeing a corpse. That's pretty bad. And if it was moving, it was even worse. It was like people responded the same way they would respond to an image or a movie of a zombie. They just couldn't deal with this. There was something about the almost real that bothered people. And that place is called the Uncanny Valley. Now, the reason that I bring that up, it's probably kind of obvious, is people with Asperger syndrome, in my opinion, appear to live in this place called the Uncanny Valley. That is that place where we're not quite human. I mean, we are 100% human, obviously, but the perception is there's something just not quite right about us. There's something that people just can't quite put their finger on. And I understand that because I have encountered people myself that are much the same. And they just seem a little bit odd, They seem to be a little bit creepy. Well, there's another example of this, and people who produce movies understand this phenomenon because they have tried to make movies with characters that are animated, they put a lot of time, effort in this, a lot of talent, that are so good, they just human-like. But you can tell there's something different about them. And those movies bombed because people didn't want to go to the movies watching zombies. I mean, they had the same reaction. But there are some animated characters like Elmer Fudd. He's human-like. He doesn't creep anybody out. And there is Fred Flintstone. Remember him? And what was his wife's name? See what happens when you get older. You can't remember these. Wilma, yeah. You can't remember these things, and you have to wait a few seconds. They didn't creep us out. But when Hollywood began making those animated characters that are more and more lifelike, we didn't find them amusing anymore. We found them creepy. And I think there's something about people with Asperger syndrome that people just don't connect with us, and they don't even know why. They don't know why, but they don't know why they don't connect with animations that make them feel like they're looking at a zombie. Now, I don't even like to think about that. You mean when I show up in a crowd, at church or school or work, it's like they're with a zombie. I'm a zombie. So all this time they've been calling us space aliens, and it turns out we're not. We're zombies. Now, if you stop and think about it, we don't have a lot of emotions. Typically we don't display a lot of emotions, but yeah, I honestly believe that, well, I shouldn't say believe, but I highly suspect that same neurological phenomenon is happening in the human brain when they're around Aspies or anyone else that doesn't seem quite right. I mean, just like 99.9%, but there's a little bit that is off. And there we are. That's where we all live. We live in a nice community called the Uncanny Valley. So if I ever start a town, which I don't think I ever will, I think that's what I'm going to call it, the Uncanny Valley. And only people with Asperger syndrome can live there. That was number 25. Number 26 is, I wanted to read this, before we go on to number 26, I forgot, I wanted to read this quote from Charles Darwin. This is in the book, The Voyage of the Beagle, when he was doing his research, and he encountered a snake that has come to be known as the, I forgot the name of it. See what happens when you get old, you can't think of anybody's name, even snakes. No, it wasn't Lucifer, so don't try that. He said this, and I'm reading. He said, I imagine this repulsive aspect originates from the features being placed in positions with respect to each other, somewhat proportional to the human face, and thus would obtain a scale of hideousness. That's the end of the quote. So Charles Darwin saw this snake that looked very human-like, and he described it in what was later described by Masahiro Mori as being, what was that word he used? Repulsive. I don't like that either. I don't like people thinking of me as repulsive, but I guess they do. I don't think it is quite that bad, but it's kind of like, not as bad as a zombie or a vampire, but yeah, we kind of creep people out. They're not real comfortable around us, and what happens is they reject us, and sometimes they hate us, and they want to get away from us, or they want us to get away from them. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. That's why we have a comment section. You feel free to let me know what you think. Number 26. It's a whole lot like number 25, actually. All of these 32 points that we're making. And this, by the way, I forgot to mention, is the fourth in 4 parts. We're breaking 32 things that Aspies are like. But we had to, into 4 sections of 8, so we get all 32 in. Otherwise, take a couple hours to make the video. Number 26, and we're going to go through these next 7 points fairly quickly, is we don't seem to belong in this world. Just, and again, that's that thing about space aliens or zombies. It's kind of like we are from a different planet. But we're humanoids, give us that much, but there's something a little bit different. And I was trying to think of a good analogy that would explain this, and the best I could come up with was a ukulele section in an orchestra. Nothing wrong with ukuleles in Hawaii, that genre of music, but in an orchestra, I don't think that fit. Now, when I was thinking this over, the first thing I came up with was steel guitar section in an orchestra. That probably wouldn't work either. But, steel guitars, they have their own genre, well, Hawaiian music and country music. So I decided to go with ukulele, but you could pick either one you want. I don't care. Which one do you like? Do you like ukuleles or steel guitar? But the point is, we don't belong. Now, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. Doesn't mean that we're flawed somehow, but if you think of the world as an orchestra and a symbiotic, we don't belong rather in, or seem to belong in that little component of society. Now, in large, in humanity in large, we have a good place, just like in the music world. The ukulele has a phenomenal place, so does the steel guitar, just not in an orchestra. So Aspies are great contributors to the human experience. Where would people be without Aspies inventing? What did we invent? Tesla. We invented probably everything that has anything to do with technology. Automobiles, spacecraft, NASA. It's like Aspie Central. They're just great contributions that Aspies have made. But we don't fit in the orchestra. We don't do well in the social arena. That is a different symbiotic, a different symphony that we just, yeah, we can play along if you want. It doesn't sound right. You know, there's something off about it. Number 27 is this. We don't understand greetings and goodbyes. And I hadn't thought of that for a long time, but when I was a college student, I came home, carried my bags in the house. I went to school in Virginia, came home to Indiana, carried my bags in the house. I didn't think anything of it. I was home, you know, put my bags down in the my bedroom, went back out to get some more. And as I was going out the door, I heard my mom complaining to my sister that I just came in and just talking about me, that I just came in and I didn't say anything. She thought that was really weird, and she was really bothered by it, almost offended. And my sister, quick understanding that I was within earshot, quickly intervened and, you know, changed the conversation between the two of them. But yeah, I just never thought of it. You know, I'm home. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to hug somebody? I don't think so. Am I supposed to say, hello, I'm home? You saw me. You heard me come in the door. There I am. What? What else is there to do? Well, I'm just not very good at that. And I'm also not very good at saying goodbyes. You know, if I'm leaving and you don't know I'm leaving, I'll tell my wife I'm leaving. But I don't make a big deal about it. I'm just leaving. I'm gone. You know, I was here, now I'm gone. And there's, you know. So that's one of those things that Aspies tend to struggle with, and that's what it's like being an Aspie. I don't know that it bothers us. It doesn't bother me. It just seems to bother everybody else. Number 28, we don't care for touching and hugs. Now, you can see how this kind of dovetails into greetings and goodbyes, particularly if you haven't seen somebody in a very, very long time. I just don't get it. And I know there's some Aspies that are probably okay with this, but many of us are not. But I just don't get it. What is the big deal about two bodies, you know, when they hug and they, you know, what is that? I don't even want a handshake. Fist bump, I can do that reluctantly, but no, I don't like to be hugged. I mean, there are rare occasions, but by and large, I'd as soon not be touched. You know, I just don't like it. I don't like hugs. I don't like touching. So to me, it's just awkward and pointless. And I know if you go to some kind of a family gathering, particularly if they haven't seen you in a long time, or maybe it's a funeral, that somebody will want to come up and give you a big hug. And I say, no, that's okay, I'm good, but they hug you anyhow, so whatever. And I understand why they do that. I think it's they're just flush with warm emotions. Makes them feel good. You know, makes the dopamine in their head just circulate a little bit extra hit there. It makes them feel good. So I don't care that people do that. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. But I just don't care to do it myself. Sometimes, but not very often. Number 29, conversation is largely pointless. Talk is for necessary conversation. Yeah, there are some exceptions to this rule. Trying to think what they would be. I don't know. Well, I know what it is. If somebody wants to talk to you about your special interest, because most every Aspie has a special interest, then for some reason the conversation becomes much smoother, much easier. And I've mentioned before how I have, and I think maybe a lot of Aspies have this, I don't know really, but I have this thing. It's not a split personality. It's a conjoined personality. It's not like I have two separate personalities, but I have two different expressions of the same personality, and man, are they different. One is very confident. I'm actually in that, mood? I'm in that persona right now. Feel totally confident. I'm fine. I'm not nervous. No stress, no anxiety, none whatsoever. Just perfectly happy talking to you. Hope you feel the same. But there are other times when I'm around people and I'm anxious and I'm nervous and I'm very inhibited. What is that? Well, that's something that occurs when people want to engage me in conversation. Yeah, there are some exceptions, but not very many. One of the few exceptions is when somebody wants to talk about what I want to talk about. It's almost kind of selfish, but that's the way it is. And something that I've noticed when I've tried to have conversations with other people is there's this time period, the spell, that is referred to as awkward science. Awkward silence. You call it science if you want to, but it's awkward silence. I don't know what to say. The other guy doesn't know what to say. So we just sit there not saying anything. Awkward, more so for the other guy than for the Aspie, I would think. But I think Aspies are kind of uncomfortable as well, just being in that situation. Number 30 is... Well, before I tell you number 30, let me say this. I'm not sure every Aspie does this, but I'm just kind of guessing with this one, and that is Aspies fantasize about being stranded on a deserted island. Have you ever done that? I mean, maybe not an island, maybe a cabin in the woods. You know, just somewhere where you're just alone. Maybe you're on top of a mountain where you got a view. Little bonus, maybe you're in a cabin on the lake somewhere, just you. You know, Golden Pond, there you are. All by yourself. No bothersome people whatsoever. Do you fantasize about that when you could just be alone? I think not only do we fantasize about it, but I think sometimes we act it out. We don't get to the island. We don't get to the cabin in the woods or on the lake, but we get alone. Sometimes it's just in our car, you know, or wherever. Get home all by ourselves. We're perfectly comfortable in that. So, yeah, I would kind of like to be on a deserted island. Not sure how long I'd stay there. Not sure I'd get along with the mosquitoes. Snakes, you know, that one with a face. Not sure I'd get along with if there were some hostile natives around who don't want me there. I'd probably have a problem with that, but in my mind, when I fantasize about this getaway island, well, if you're just pretending, you know, you can eliminate all those things, be the perfect place. Number 31 is a thing about this: we speak a different language from neurotypical people. There is a word fun in the English language, F-U-N. The Chinese language for that, I got no idea what it is. I could have looked it up, but I didn't, because I'm never going to use it unless I'm using it right now for an illustration in this video. I'll probably never say fun in Chinese. The only words in Chinese I care to learn are Kentucky Fried Chicken and Diet Pepsi. If I could learn those two words in Chinese, I could survive in China. I'd do just fine. But these other words, why do you even need those words? Okay, let's apply that illustration. I know what it's fun to be an Aspie, but I have no idea what it's like to have fun as a neurotypical. I know they have fun doing things they like to do. They like to go to parties. They like to get together and they'll have political rallies. They'll get together and have weddings. They have all kinds of social events. It's like they just can't stop coming up with these social ideas. They have affinity groups, everything you could possibly imagine, from professional affinity groups to affinity groups of things that they like. I think I mentioned in another video, just as a good example, affinity group of car enthusiasts. You know, there are Corvette associations. There are, you know, old Ford truck associations, affinity groups, and they get together and drive around together. What fun that is. For them, I don't want to go to your rally. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm perfectly okay with it. If you want to go, I just don't care to show up. I kind of like old trucks. Got one myself. Trying to get it back from the mechanic. He's still working on it. But I just don't care to meet up with other people with old trucks. Not a bad thing, but my idea of fun is getting in my truck and driving alone. Get in my Corvette, put down the top, and go out on the road somewhere all by myself. Nice, warm, starlit night. Perfectly happy with that. We speak a different language. The word fun is different for them than it is for us. And you could apply that to just about everything. Number 32, this is the last one. And I gotta say that there's a lot more than 32. If I'd stop and think about it, I'd probably come up with a 3,200. And I'm sure you probably could too, but there's certain sounds that people with Asperger syndrome find annoying. And again, this doesn't apply to everybody, but it applies to me, and I'm assuming that it applies to most everyone else from what I experience, because, I'm pushing 70 years old. I've said this many times, and life has just been a good experience for me. Good learning experience. I'm not saying I haven't had a lot of bad times, because I have, but I have a lot of good times too. And so one of the things I've learned is, and I'm just sharing those things with you, and hopefully I can encourage you, but one of the things that I've found is particularly annoying is being in a crowd and listening to all those people talk at the same time. Now, obviously, it doesn't bother them. They probably don't even notice it because they're busy talking. So there are certain sounds that people with Asperger syndrome don't like. Now, if you want to understand how we feel, just if you're not an Aspie, imagine you've probably been through this before. The teachers, you know what I'm going to say, right? Fingernail on the chalkboard, or somebody eating food with a fork and they scrape it on their teeth. Most everybody understands how annoying that is. Well, Aspies have their own set of annoying sounds. Those two being just a couple of them. There are many others that seem to be unique to people with Asperger syndrome. Another one that I thought of was the sound of traffic, and I think that's not exclusively people with Asperger syndrome, but if you're going down the interstate, you'll see a lot of times if the interstate is near a housing development of any kind, a lot of times there is a sound barrier. This big, tall wall. What is that thing? 20, 30 feet maybe? I don't know if it's that tall. But it's a sound barrier to keep the noise out so people who live there can't hear the interstate. So that particularly bothers me. Years ago, we were visiting Los Angeles, California, and I'm trying to think, Santa Monica, south of Los Angeles. And my relative who lives there reserved for us, this nice 50-style motel, and it was a really nice motel. Basic, it wasn't a classy place, but it was just, kind of a fun place to stay. And I couldn't sleep because of the noise of the traffic. What is that? Highway 1 maybe that runs up and down the coast in California. And the traffic just drove me nuts. Now, I don't know if that's because I'm a person with Asperger syndrome, Aspergian, but it seemed to bother me and no one else. Now, I had a sister who, she would have been 70 years old if she had lived. She died when she was 35, so 35 years ago. But she had a problem with people whispering, or not whispering, but, that, by the way, is one. But whistling is what I meant to say. And I'm guessing that she was an Aspie as well. And I know that Aspies tend to be males more than females, but there still are a lot of females who are Aspies. And I'm pretty sure, just looking back at her childhood and the way that she behaved, that she's pretty much like me. She probably had Asperger syndrome. She was never tested for it, as far as I know. But whistling drove her nuts. If you started to whistle around her, which I didn't do much because I'm not good at it, but she'd shut you down immediately. Stop doing that. That annoys me. So there are certain sounds that we find particularly annoying, that no one else doesn't bother anyone else. Worst thing I can imagine. If I ever am punished for some crime, what they're going to do is they're going to put me in a barber's chair and whistle. near an interstate while the traffic is going up and down in the middle of a big crowd with all that noise. That would be torment for me. You see those two rectangles on the screen? Those are there for a purpose if you want this conversation to continue. That's why they're there. Just click on either one of them. I'll keep talking. If not, thanks for stopping by, and we will see you all next time.